Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Well, there are a few topics, some less relevant, some more relevant, I think. But obviously, since we had a 9/11 anniversary, I was wondering if you sometimes yourself go back to all those pictures and the movie so-called
Hmm.
what was shown on TV, and do you ever consider yourself how much what are we fooled, or how relevant was 9/11 really looking back and stuff like that. So that's one of
Hmm.
the topics, because people always like to have a anniversary and talk about the same stuff, but I think there are some few key issues maybe that some people are still stuck for years on this topic, and I don't know if you do that yourself, that you try to reconsider maybe, or try to think about the same topic every year, for example during the anniversary, and think about what we missed, what are the mysteries left, or do you even sometimes do that? Because I have an opinion about that which is kind
Hmm.
of different than other people might think.
Well, I don't pay much attention to anniversaries for the simple reason that I often have to be reminded that my birthday is coming because I don't even recollect some of the dates. But it's about the way my mind works and my memory establishes things. So, but yes, I do go back, especially to 9/11. I think back because 9/11 started my the deeper step of my journey, I would say. Although I was already spiritually inclined, it was around 2005, 6 that I started looking at the other aspects of 9/11 not being as told, and so yeah, I do look back as well.
Yeah, because there's one obviously very important thing that makes human beings emotional, right? Whether somebody died or nobody died, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things, and people like to. There are certain people in this corner of the internet, if I might use John LeBon's terminology, right?
Yeah.
Um, who will, jump. The first thing they will say is nobody died, nobody got hurt, right, or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will insist that it's impossible that nobody ever dies in some big events or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, the question is it really that important whether zero people died, one people died, or two and a half people died, right? I mean, metaphorically speaking, but, I don't know if even that is the most important question. Obviously, I think you mentioned it a few times that the spiritual aspect, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is when it comes to the human beings living currently in the world and what that event that did to them, right? I think that might be very crucial aspect that people try to don't like to talk about openly. But is
Mm-hmm.
it relevant to you that some people insist that nobody died? Some people will claim, even listen, even matter of quantum of conscience keeps insisting every year that he knows somebody who died, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I followed his channel. I thought he was genuine, but I don't know if that's the case, right? He will argue, and people and laugh at people who will say that nobody died. So people are very stubborn, obviously, about those situations, and
Mm-hmm.
especially about death. So I don't know what would you say to
Well,
that?
as you've well presented to me, the spiritual aspect in the sense of the symbolic aspect of 9/11 is more important. Yes, is the most important, but it is of material importance as well to distinguish if um, someone died directly as a result of an event. It is of material importance because every life, every human life, at least to the person in question, is important, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is of material importance, and also it brings to mind aspects such as responsibility. What is one thing is the weight of responsibility of a promoter of a change in society. Another is responsibility for murder or something related. So it is of material importance to analyze that. And I think that the at least after a certain point, we could discuss history, but that's not the point right now. But at least after a certain point, that there was caution in regards to having victims directly, casualties, let's say, directly linked to an event such as of this magnitude. When we analyze that, and even the fakeologist had a week just now, the week that 9/11 was, had a review of September Clues with several guests. One of them was Simon himself, the author, he also showed, especially in the addendum regarding Building 7, which is the most obvious of the fake footage, perhaps, that it was all of the videos and imagery that we saw had problems, so had necessarily to be at the very least tampered with, if not outright fabricated. So once we established that, and that is perhaps the hardest point to establish for a mind that is used to, let's say, normality, right? And the normal view would be, the news. The news can sometimes skew the truth, but they have to report on actual things, right? Mm-hmm. And so the most difficult point is to establish that all the footage was at the very least tampered with. Once you establish that, then all the rest starts to crumble. And of course, during this week of review, they didn't even touch upon the Pentagon, and Lynn Ertel was vehemently saying that was the key point, and I agree with her in that regard, because if you look at the Pentagon angle, what happened there was even more impossible than the rest, right? Yeah. And they didn't even make an attempt to present any kind of footage, be it fabricated or another. They just present that GIF or GIF, whatever it's called, that shows a blurry thing exploding onto a wall, and that's it. Yeah. That was the only thing that, and then the hole in the side of the Pentagon. But so they didn't even try. So once you establish that, you can more easily look at the angle of the possible victims, right? Because you would not, if you wanted to really cause a traumatic event that had material consequence, you would not fake the footage, you would not fake anything. What you would do is you would actually get 2 commercial airplanes to go into the towers if it is possible from the steering point of view. I don't know. I was never a pilot, so I don't know if such a big airplane would have that precision. It probably would. But they would ram those actual aircraft with people inside, normal commercial jets, onto the towers. The towers would be working as normal, so with all the offices working. Of course, we already know that many of the offices were empty as people had vacated, the enterprises had vacated them, but that's, again, a different discussion. And then they would bring down in a controlled demolition the towers and all the rest. And of course, they would probably even bring in a 3rd airplane to hit Building 7 and the adjacent buildings to at least give a certain reality, right? A certain sense of reality of why those buildings were to collapse as well. This didn't happen, right? So if they really wanted to cause a trauma with material consequence, they would actually have done this. And the fake footage shows that they didn't. They manufactured the entire footage. They
Yes.
presented crisis actors with clearly contradictory and false testimony. It can't be otherwise. And also, what happened after that is that people who were in the vicinity, although maybe not in the actual, proximity of the buildings, but in the general vicinity, let's say, would fill in the blanks with what they were being given by the news. Because I do not think that anyone witnessing the event would have witnessed it without following what was being told in the news. I mean, imagine yourself in a situation such as that. You see the smoke, you hear all kinds of confusion, and you see a huge tower covered in smoke and all that. Of course, you're going to inquire or try to switch on a radio or go to somewhere where there's a TV to try to figure out what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if someone, for example, was in the vicinity, all they saw was smoke and confusion, and they grabbed their radio or went to a place with a TV, and they saw the footage that we analyzed, they would link one with the other, and the memory would be solidified in that way, right? So it's not that the person is lying per se, in the sense of voluntarily lying, willingly lying, but that they got a perception that was carried by what they were seeing in reality and the caption or the motivations and the explanation that was given on TV. So even, let's say, innocent and people that weren't involved in this theater can present witness accounts of, I was there, and they can even say, I saw the planes, and they can even say, I saw the people jumping or whatever. They couldn't see. It's, you cannot see one person jumping from a tower. I mean, even the photography itself, the photograph, supposedly of the jumping man, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've taken many photographs, but once you zoom in, you either know that something is going to happen in that particular spot, or you can't frame it so quickly, right?
Yes.
It's one of the, it's like the that photograph of the bullet going by Trump. Do you remember that now recently?
Oh yeah.
Someone presented a photograph.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Where you see the bullet. I mean, please, right? So it would be virtually impossible to witness. And if you're in terms of scale, if you were at the bottom of a skyscraper such as that, you would not even see a person falling down. Only when the person was too close to you, and you probably wouldn't have the time to even step aside. So those are all, like I said, inconsistent, and it can involve innocent people that actually think that they solidified their memory correct, but they were led to have that memory. So when we put this all together, if everything presented was false in this manner, why then would they not take into account the victims, right? Because if they didn't take into account victims, again, I say, they would use actual commercial jets that were programmed to fly on that day and divert them. And they wouldn't care about the pilots, they wouldn't care about the hosts or the stewards, they wouldn't care about the passengers, they wouldn't care about anything, right? They would just do an actual false flag, right? One of the first theories that came out was false flag. They would do an actual false flag, which is actual victims, actual attack, but not performed by the enemy, but by the own military or the side that was wanting to start the war. And they didn't do that. So one arrives at the conclusion. Of course, it's not that I know that nobody died. Of course, I don't know. But as a logical conclusion of all this is that they, at the very least, took all the precautions not to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if anyone looking at the events of that day, imagine someone with a weak heart looks at the TV and sees the tower crumbling or the tower in flames and whatever, and they have a heart attack, that is a victim as well. We could consider a direct...
Yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up,
Yeah, we can consider that a victim. And it can be linked directly to the fakery, yes. But nonetheless, we did see, I think, the precautions on the side of no victims, all theater, cause the motivation for a change in society. And I think that is evident from all this. Again, we can't know for sure if somebody died or not, somebody got hurt or not as a result of, but that the precautions were there, I think it's evident.
Yeah, and I agree with you with that and the fake footage, right? That those towers and those planes, so that obviously is fake footage and plenty of CGI, plenty of nonsense and crisis actors, and obviously that is true. Why the reason is I'm bringing this topic, and maybe I spoke a little bit too nonchalantly about death and people dying, but I think there is three main issues that come to my mind during that week and all those programs that I watched, and even Fakeologist and other channels that I used to watch. I have three things that try to view this 9/11 stuff from a different angle, right? One thing that you already mentioned is that people sometimes speak as if, the death caused by impact, or if somebody, let's say, thinks that somebody was in those towers, even though there is plenty of evidence that nobody was there, right? Hollow towers and the pictures and the non-functioning business or the business owned by CIA and stuff like that, right? So there is obviously plenty of reason to think that there weren't many people in those towers, if anyone was even there, right? But I sometimes hear people who will, let's say, you mentioned if somebody watches it and has a heart attack, right? I wouldn't say that people sometimes make this distinction about death, caused by government or war, and somebody suffering as a non-direct impact of that, right? If somebody has a heart attack, or if somebody walks down the street and hears an explosion and maybe has a heart attack, or if somebody is in the military and tries to tell other people that it was a scam and he gets fired and dies of starvation because he has no money to live, right? I mean, those things are not smaller tragedies. I would even argue sometimes that those things might be bigger tragedies than if somebody dying by explosion right on the spot, right? I'm not saying that anybody died because I don't know that, right? I'm not claiming that I know that people died because I don't know, and obviously footage is fake. But sometimes I have a problem with truthers and content creators who will try to, like, this death is more tragic than other deaths, right? I wouldn't make that categorization. That's the first thing. The second thing, obviously, I have a different opinion about death in itself, right? I don't feel like death is the ultimate tragedy in this world, like the physical death, but that's a another story. But also the problem with people who will start the conversation with half-awake people or so-called truthers who are just waking up to the media fakery, right? People will start with the nobody died, nobody got hurt, right? I don't think it's a starting point of a discussion. I think it's if anything, an ending point, right? But because people are, for once, very, very emotional about death, right? As we mentioned already, right? You have people who will very emotionally react to the idea that somebody maybe died, somebody did not die, or maybe people claiming that that nobody died, nobody got hurt, right? And I see all the time comments in all kinds of BitChute channels, Odyssey channels, people getting very frustrated with those comments, right? So people, first of all, have a very emotional reaction to that, and second of all, I wouldn't try to convince anybody about any fake events, especially a big like 9/11. I wouldn't start a conversation with a so-called half-awake human being who starts asking questions. I wouldn't start by saying no, oh, because nobody died, nobody got hurt, right? I think
Yeah.
that's the mistake that some content creators make, right? That will start with that, and I'm very aware that you won't wake up anybody up by saying nobody died, nobody got hurt. You might end your conversation with somebody on that point, right? As an ending point after showing fake planes, showing crisis actors, talking about government scams and other stuff, right? You may further down the line say somebody to somebody, hey, guess what? Relax, nobody died, okay? But that's if you start a conversation with somebody who doesn't know, and you will tell them that no, you guess, no 3,000 people died, and guess what? Nobody died. That's gonna cause a whole host of emotional triggering reactions, right? So
Yes.
that's if you know what I mean, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely agreed. I think that that has to do with presentation of information. That it's something that people don't practice usually, and I think that the smartphone era took that away a lot from people because they usually don't converse about deeper topics face to face, for example, right? Or even in an audio manner like we are doing now. And when I say deeper conversations, I mean deeper conversations. Even the other day, I was talking with someone who's at the fakeologist circle, let's say, around the fakeologist site, that she is a Greek and lives in Switzerland. And she was saying that her youth was spent talking in a group face to face with people for hours and hours and hours about the deeper subjects, right? Nowadays, this doesn't happen. The conversations not only don't go deep, but they are not usually face to face in that sense. So you have it's through an app or through something like that depersonalizes the communication as well, because the communication goes on at various levels, not just the words. So I think that people lost that practice, that training, let's say. It's a sort of a training on to present their views to the other, and to do that you have to put yourself in the shoes of the other in a partial manner, right? You have to understand, okay, I need to understand what this person is able to grasp at this moment and present only up to that point, and then we can continue the conversation at a later date, if there was any result to that first conversation, right? So that, I think, is a skill that has been removed from, let's say, the majority of the people, and that has an influence on what we see in that regards, in terms of people want to reach the ending of the book without reading the whole thing before, right? If you present the ending of a book, or if you say the movie ends this way, there was no build-up towards it. You can't present the ending without going through the rest, so that it builds up to a certain point, so that the information conveyed makes sense in the end. And that's why, for example, in just now when I spoke about my views on 9/11, I focused on the fake imagery, the impossibility of it all, and only then said that they took precautions not to have victims, which doesn't mean that there were no victims, right? Because like you well pointed out, someone might just have a heart attack or whatever, and or lose their jobs or something like that, which has real life consequence. And the responsibility would, of course, lie with those that perpetrated the fakery. So these components have to be presented in a certain manner, and it's not a one formula fits all, because for each person that you're talking to, they will have a different position and mental viewpoint that allows them to go only up to a certain point. And once you can understand and sort of empathically detect where that point is, the best is, okay, stop there, and at a later date, if you want to, we can continue, that kind of thing. So I agree with you, and it's something that I think is not generally done on purpose, but there are people doing that on purpose, exactly to muddy the waters and to prevent the discussion from reaching the massified minds, I would say.